Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, we're at the crossroads with MDB, and today we're going to continue this tradition this week of exploring producers, and how could we not include our very own Andrew Loog Oldham? That's right. The most extraordinary man in so many ways. He's here with you at the weekends. He's been here for over 10 years in Little Steven's underground garage. He's an incredible man with an incredible intellect and obviously incredible taste. This was a man that began his career as a teenager. That's right, on Carnaby Street in the fashion business. Can you believe it? This life that he's led is absolutely a musical. You could get Mick and Keith, well, maybe you couldn't, but I'd certainly help write a musical about Andrew Loog Oldham. With your help, any of you guys out there play piano or some melodic instrument, we could write what would it be called? You know what, I got a great title. Like, researching Andrew, there was this wonderful description, which even he might have come up with, Pimp Presario. Pimp Presario. Pimp Presario. There's a catchy musical title. Anyway, let's get into it. Andrew, of course, responsible for and created the image that surrounded the mythological rock and roll band that was the greatest rock and roll band in the world. Absolutely. I mean, of course you have the Beatles, and you have to sort of put that that sort of religion aside for a second and concentrate on this version of rock and roll, because what he did was so brilliant. Not only did he recognize the brilliance of the Rolling Stones, but he could see just on a pragmatic, marketable level that they were the bad boys versus the Mop Tops, the Beatles. So he could market them in a way that was rebellious and that was the antithesis of the boys in the suits. I mean, the initial photographs of the Rolling Stones, they are wearing sort of like uniforms, but he let them be themselves and encouraged their flamboyance because he was indeed from the fashion business. London at that time, setting a context, was the most stylish, revolutionary place, sexually, certainly sartorially, in terms of fashion and music, photography, dance, mime, revolution, drugs, sex. All of these things were personified in a sense by rock and roll. Rock and roll was the motivator, the drug that fed the addict, and the addict was people that want to change. They wanted to change from the Second World War and do something new and different, and Andrew was really an architect of this entire meeting. This entire meeting place for change. And it's an amazing, amazing career he had. You know, he started off, as I say, in the fashion business, and then suddenly he became introduced to the Rolling Stones, and he took that on like the perfect jacket. The perfect velvet jacket with the perfect sleeve length and the perfect amount of buttons, probably 5 buttons in those days. And he created the band in the sense that he encouraged them with, I think, the most important thing that has allowed us to enjoy them for 50 years, and that is he got Mick and Keith in a room and he said, you do not leave this room until you've written songs. And that's what they did. They started to create this music, and lo and behold, they turned into the greatest rock and roll writers ever. So Oldham played out the Stones bad boy stuff. Obviously, he had all these wonderful quotes about them. I mean, my goodness me, if he's anything, he's quotable, as he is every weekend. But one of his quotes is, the Beatles looked like they were in show business. And that was the important thing. And the important thing for the Rolling Stones was to look as if they were not, which is so haiku in this case. And he also had that wonderful thing that I remember as a kid, you know, because I'm like 4 or 5 years younger than him, so I remember this stuff, man, you know, and I knew exactly, you know, who he was, even back in those days with those perfect, unique shades that he always had, sort of this very kind of, this wonderful game face, a rock and roll game face. One of the quotes he had was, would you let your daughter marry a Rolling Stone, which I think is just brilliant. I mean, within a week, it had become a slogan. The band became the dirtiest band in Britain, and it really gave them an identity. And it's funny that I have a problem saying identity, because that's the problem of us all, finding out who we are. What do we stand for? If we don't stand for something, I'm fond of saying, we fall over. So, in 1963, from 1963 to 1967, this man produced the Rolling Stones. He produced those albums, all of those unbelievable albums that have really, become the template for rock and roll, copied by so many young men that all want to look like Mick and Keith. I mean, it's just an incredible achievement that he did, because I think why I'm so enthusiastic about all of this is because he invented it. He invented production. He wasn't a producer, but he knew what he wanted. I remember one of the great quotes, I think it was in the NME, some one of those British newspapers, that when the arrows went into the red, he applauded. He said, yeah, sure, why not? He broke rules. And so did the Stones. And it's an immortal and amazing and legendary thing that he did. He really did. He brought Lennon and McCartney down there. They did I Want to Be Your Man. He was constantly working it, loving it, living it. Right, and that's what you've got to do. He had no previous experience as a producer, but my goodness, the record sounded great. Now that tells you something, doesn't it? It really sort of informs you. And there they were. Every photo session there, he'd be fixing a scarf. And that's essential. You've got to have an auteur, and he was the first real stylish, brilliant manager of rock and roll. There are arguably only a few: Peter Grant, Chris Stamp, Kit Lambert, Peter Rudge. There's very few, but he is at the top of that list in my humble opinion. And on top of all of that, 65, he set up Immediate Records, which was the Small Faces. John Mayall, Rod Stewart, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, a lot of incredible people on that label. So there you have it. Andrew Loog Oldham, unbelievable. In 2005, he met Stevie Van Zandt, and Stevie asked him to host in the Underground Garage, where we are right now. So that's my homage to the great Andrew Loog Oldham, ladies and gentlemen. Long may he reign, right here in Little Steven's Underground Garage.